We're so excited for your presentations today, and we'll get started with the My Network Her one.
All right, thank you so much for the introduction, y'all. I really appreciate that. I have a presentation to share, so I believe if I start sharing my screen, then that should work. One second. Okay. I'm not sure if I can share it, but I can, if it's okay with y'all, just go through everything. All right. I say y'all a lot. I'm from Texas. I live in Texas, so I feel like I'm talking to a lot of New Yorkers. I feel like that's not something you guys are used to, but I say y'all all the time. So
really quickly, if you want to drop the link in the chat, I should be able to share it. I don't know, sometimes Zoom is finicky.
Okay, yeah, I can do that real quick. Let's see. Drop the link for Canva, and in the meantime, introduce myself a little bit. So I am the social media strategist for My Network Her. Essentially what that means is that I reach out for grants, collaborations, and I make social media posts for them. So if you were to go onto like our TikTok, you can see some videos that I've made, or I kind of work with, okay, there we go. Yeah, and I work with kind of just keeping our SEO in check and things like that. Okay, so My Network Her. So our table of contents, we're going to introduce a little bit of our team, not too much, the problem that we saw, what our product is, how the pilot went down, and the launch since then, a little sneak peek, and then how you can get in contact with us. Or you can just pause it, it's okay.
Oh, got it.
You're all good. Okay. Our team, so there are the co-founders, which we have already talked about, and then there's all sorts of people. We got like the graphic design, the people on the blog, and social media. We're all constantly in collaboration with one another, kind of working on the different sections, and we have meetings quite often to talk about these things, and we just think as a team, this works best, to really have people that are categorized, but also working with each other. So it's a little bit of us. And here is the problem. So a good thing is that 87% of mentors and mentees feel empowered by their mentoring relationships and have developed greater confidence, and 84 Fortune 500 companies have mentoring programs. Mentoring programs also have boosted minority representation at management level form from 9% to 24%. When we talk about minority representation, specifically, also as you can tell from our name, like My Network Her, that's usually using to empower women into these spaces. And mentors are extremely important for many people. And the problem that we saw is that most high schoolers do not have a mentor. They don't reach out to a mentor. And a big reason for that is money. It's a huge thing that all of our sessions that you can book with a mentor are free, just because it is such an issue of not being able to afford that help. And another thing is developing the personal confidence to ask for help and to be vulnerable enough to say that you need help. So I really wanted to inspire people through this organization to reach out for that help that they need. So what was our solution to that is creating a platform where high schoolers, a part of gender marginalized communities, can find verified mentors. So this means a place where high school students can go onto our website and find, PhD students, college graduates, people who are currently in college, who can help them with all sorts of mentorship things. Specifically, we work a lot within academic mentoring. So talking about things like your grades, maybe a 4-year plan, help on like your passion project, things like that. These are people that can help you with that, but also a little bit with personal things. That's not particularly what we specialize in, but we have collaborated. I'll talk about that a little bit later with people who do that. The verified mentors, it can communicate their knowledge to the mentees. So once again, this is just people sharing what they know, you share what you know, and work together to really make that into the best situation possible. And also a place where high schoolers and high schools can find speakers through our website to come and give talks at high schools. Next is the pilot program results. So what happened after just a little kind of test run of everything is we did a feedback form from the mentors, from some people who maybe wanted to use this, and what we learned from that is that we need to understand the changes that we needed to make in order to make the program feel more full and feel more inclusive. We needed to know how to suit the program for both the mentors and the mentees. We wanted this to be a two-sided thing, not a one-sided thing. And also how to successfully communicate and run meetings. I think any startup organization knows the trouble of how often do you have a meeting and how do you get people to show up and how do you work out those things. So definitely a struggle, but those were things we're very fortunate to have now. Okay, next is our product and kind of how to find your mentor. So you can book a one-on-one meeting or you can schedule monthly meetings with the different mentors on our site. And it's pretty simple. You can just go on, find your mentor, you can read through their bios, and the great thing about having that one-on-one meeting is you can have a couple of those and kind of discover who you like, who you want to work with. You can do this with as many people that you want on our website. So you can really move around and have flexibility and see who's going to help you personally the best. And then finding our speakers. This is essentially the same thing, but this is talking about how high schools can come in and find speakers. Is they can, or as a student, you can also do this and submit a form for a speaker to come to your high school possibly. These speakers do live all around, but there's also, of course, Zoom meetings and things like that where we can, even from different parts of the US, talk to people and give overall talks about how important mentorship is. Especially in high school, this is extremely important because high school is a time when you're beginning to individualize a lot, and that's very scary. And oftentimes you need someone who's going to guide you through that, who's not going to be your parent or a family member, or even not a friend, just someone who can help you professionally and guide you into these big life changes that you're experiencing and will only further continue to experience. And some of our mentors and speakers, just for a little bit of reference, like some people from Duke University, people from Google, Georgia Tech. So like I said, a lot of these people are college students or are college graduates, but yeah, these are just some of the places where some of our speakers are from. And here are just some highlighted things that we wanted to bring up. Earlier, it was mentioned the Riley's Way grant and fellowship for background checks. So we got a $2,000 grant to do some background checks on the people who we want to hire as mentors. And also just some money for upcoming is we're going to have a hackathon in New York. Social media expansion. This is a little bit where I tie in. So we expanded into doing a lot more TikTok and Instagram and trying to open up across many different platforms so that we could reach more people. Our blog, where we share some stories, some experiences, and YouTube. A lot of these things are pretty connected and we tend to focus on the same things across, but this is mostly just to reach more people and really make sure that we can tell everyone that we can about our website and about how they can get free mentorship. And earlier I had mentioned that we did collaborate with an organization who did more personal mentorship. This is Boba Talks. So Boba Talks does academic mentorship as well, but they do some personal stuff as well. So that's also a great resource in kind of collaboration with ours if you're looking for more personal things. And then a little sneak peek into the future and what's going on. Partnerships with organizations founded by gender marginalized high schoolers. So this is, if that sounds like you know, reach out, and that's gonna soon come up about how to reach out, but reach out. And also, this is just part of what our social media team is constantly working on, is reaching out and finding ways that we can collaborate with people who share similar goals within their organizations or their personal projects so that we can expand this further. And you can also just pre-register. You can sign up on our organization. And in November is a little bit what I was talking about, that hackathon. This is going to be hosted over 2 days. It's going to be in New York. There are prizes that we are working out, some food that we're working out, and all sorts of things. So that's super fun. And if you're interested in going, definitely reach out. Or if you know anyone in New York who'd be interested. And lastly, also, this is where you could attend the hackathon or just reach out at mynetworkher.org. You can also find us on TikTok at mynetworkher, or really anywhere at mynetworkher. And thank you guys for listening to this presentation today. I really appreciate it for you guys having me on here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I will now pass it off to Sasha. I think you also have a presentation to share, right? Perfect.
Yeah, okay. I'm so excited to be here. Let me share my screen. I hope it works. Okay. It's actually not working for me. Can I send? I think it might be my laptop though. I'll just send the link to you. Okay.
Oh, I didn't even realize I was on mute. I'm sorry. I said in the meantime, you can give yourself a little introduction.
Oh. Hi everyone. So I'm Sasha. I'm a high school senior in New York City, and I'm part of the New York chapter of Encode Justice. Oh, perfect. Okay. So my presentation, so this is from Encode Justice. And you can go to the next slide. Okay, so Encode Justice is a youth-powered nonprofit organization that focuses on advocating for algorithmic justice. And we do that through a few different ways. So we do that through meeting with legislators, researching new policies and bills that are coming up that are focused on legislating or regulating artificial intelligence. And we also do that by providing resources for schools and students. So we also offer workshops and things like that. And right now we have around 40 US states and 25 countries on our team. I think that number might have changed a little bit. I think right now we're getting a lot of new members, which is super cool. But I'm specifically from the New York chapter, which the main part of Encode Justice is that we work in a chapter system. And so we have chapters in states like California, Oregon, Washington, New York, New Jersey, and in countries like France and South Korea. And the reason why we have that system is that it lets us work on a smaller scale to address the issues. And we're hoping that at some point after addressing these issues on a citywide or statewide scale, we'd be able to bring it up to a nationwide scale or even globally. But right now, the New York chapter is in their educational term. And we're working on a few events, a panel, and then also a few other projects. But we've hosted an in-person event in partnership with the Justice Education Project last year, which was really fun. And we also recently had a hackathon for high school students that's focused on algorithmic justice. And we've also met with legislators to discuss bills like the Digital Fairness Act or the facial recognition moratorium. And we've also had a few events, or we've had an event with the NYCLU focused on a student week of action. And if you want to join if you want to join the New York chapter, you can scan the QR code, and you can follow us on Instagram to keep up with or to stay updated on any new projects.
Yes, and just like we've mentioned in past presentations, all of these resources are going to be shared at the end, but feel free to take any screenshots or pictures if anyone wants to now. But now we're going to be moving into the Q&A section of the panel. So we have a few prepared questions to ask our panelists, but if anyone in the chat has anything they want to say, ask, questions, comments, please keep dropping them in the chat and we'll continuously ask them. But kind of starting off, I think we can just begin with an intro into what both got you here. I think you touched on this a little bit in your presentations, but specifically for you two, what drove you into joining each of your respective organizations or your activist journeys in general? And either of you could start.
I'll go ahead and go since we can like bounce off. Okay, we can do like you present and then I talk and then you talk. Okay. So what led me into joining My Network Her is that I really wanted to be a part of a social media team, specifically where I could focus on doing SEO and improving that and making social media posts and improving outreach, because I think that that is a huge struggle with any startup organization, is just trying to figure out how you expand it. And so much of that is trying to kind of manipulate your social media into doing that for you a little bit. And so I knew that that was the thing that was important to me. And I loved the team. I loved the message. I loved what we were sending out and kind of what the point of it was. And also the mentorship, because I think that that's so important to have either a mentor or just people that you can lean on, especially because I think in general, people tend to be very individualist and have this mindset of you're only successful if you do everything on your own, and this whole like American capitalist pull yourself up by your bootstraps thing. And it's like, it's fine to rely on other people, and it is good to rely on other people and to seek help. And so I really wanted to be a part of that mission and hopefully help somebody find out that the help that they can gain from just leaning on someone is so much better than what they could just do by themselves.
So for me, I joined Encode Justice in like end of 2021, beginning of 2022. And so that was near the first year of my high school. And I think at that time I was trying to figure out like what I liked. And I think I was like, I'm gonna figure out exactly what I'm gonna do for like the next 10 years, which is like so unrealistic to do in ninth grade. I was like, I'm gonna figure it out. And like a lot of people told me like you can kind of find organizations and clubs that you might be interested in, just try it out. And I knew that I was interested in computer science and law, but I think I had this idea that those were like complete opposites of each other, which is strange now since I work with Encode Justice. But once I had heard about Encode Justice, I was like, wow, this is super cool. They combine both computer science and computer science and the law. And I think another thing was that the issue of algorithmic justice, I had heard about it like here and there, but it was never something that was like taught directly to me, or like it wasn't something that I had spent like a really long time like researching and things like that. And so that was another thing that really piqued my interest, was that I hadn't really heard about the idea of advocating for the ethical use of AI before. I think I heard about it a little bit back in 8th grade through the Hong Kong protests of 2019 and how technology influenced that. But I think that was just like the only time that I ever heard of it. And so I think that was why I really liked Encode Justice. I think also the fact that it was student-led was super cool for me. I think being with other students, I felt like my opinions could be more heard. And I feel like at that time, I think almost all the members were high school students. And so we all had this understanding that like we all had busy schedules and we all had our own lives and things like that. And I think all of us being near like the similar stages in our lives, I think it also built like a sense of community, which was really nice. So that's what I would say pushed me to join Encode Justice.
I think there's definitely something very impactful about knowing that you're in a community of like-minded individuals, which is kind of something similar that all our organizations I think have in common, because even if they're not entirely high school students, they're mainly just youth in that kind of same age group, which transitions me into the next question that I wanted to ask, which is something we've been talking about a lot in panels. And I think it's something important to recognize as a lot of like Gen Z activists is what is it like being a youth, specifically Gen Z, in kind of more adult spaces, specifically with like mentorship in STEM careers, which often tend to be dominated by men and older individuals? What's that like? And then for Encode Justice's side, being a woman also wanting to pursue computer science, which is again not something typically that youth do, and also not typically for marginalized gender groups like us. What is that experience like for each of you?
Sasha, you can go ahead and go because I went first last time.
Okay, sorry, I'm still trying to think about my answer. I think, so I think it's been like an interesting path, I think. So I was first introduced to computer science in 7th grade. I went to a school that went from 6th to 12th grade, and I think I went to an all-girls school that focused on STEM, which I think provided me with like a pretty big like I think it provided me with like a different environment than like how a lot of people experience computer science. It wasn't like a pretty supportive environment, and I think they did focus a little bit on the importance of diversity within tech, which was really cool. But I knew that that wasn't how it would be in like the real computer science field. I think I knew that within the school I felt comfortable, but if I really went into the workforce or like I joined any other programs, it would be a lot different. I remember specifically one of my classmates had done a program surrounding cybersecurity, and she had mentioned that she was the only girl in like the entire program. And there was a lot of students there, and so she was like, that was something that was really shocking for her. But specifically with advocating for algorithmic justice, I think a lot of the legislators, a lot of them are kind of not in touch with technology and don't really keep up with like the newest developments in artificial intelligence and things like that. And so I think that makes it a little bit more difficult to push like the message of Encode Justice. I think we have to start by teaching them what artificial intelligence even is and like how everything works, and then explain why it's important to make sure that it's regulated and things like that. I think for me personally, I get really nervous when I'm talking to people who are like a lot older than me. I feel like I have the sense like, oh my God, like I'm so scared, like they must know so much more than me. But I think I've come to realize that like even if that's true, like it's worth it to just like do it. And I think at some point I became comfortable with speaking to them and things like that. So yeah.
I would say that for in my network her, and I think in general, I've seen more of a struggle specifically in also when you guys read out the bio, like my network her started by 2 women of color, and like I'm Black, for example, and that is another big struggle that I don't think is talked about often enough in sort of academic spaces, is because it's sort of this assumed thing that we don't talk about. I think that we talk about misogyny a lot, and misogyny is very real. It's a very real thing that everyone or every woman, knows being in these spaces. And it's something that I've dealt with. And I think that a lot of women in STEM have dealt with. But also specifically, I think being a woman of color adds on to that because there are specific expectations of you that if you don't fulfill, it's, you're not in the right group. And I think that that's another big struggle. But personally, I think that the way to move on to that is to put yourself in spaces where that's not happening. I think a big message that a lot of people try to put out is if you're dealing with, misogyny or racism or anything in the workplace, like you got to stick it out and you got to do this. And it's like, get yourself out of those situations. And that's what I especially love about my network her too, is it's providing a safe space for people who experience this and who say, I want help with like STEM mentorship and I'm a girl and I feel like I can't get that. But hey, here's a space where I'm not going to be discriminated because of that. And I think that's very important, is to seek out the spaces where you are accepted instead of always focusing on fighting to fit in the spaces where people won't accept you. I think that that's a big part of that. And I think that's a little bit of the self-discovery that I've gone on in this organization.
Both of you guys, both your answers are kind of reflective of how I felt in those spaces I've come into, like being a minority woman when I go into like legal fields or even into activism, things like that. It feels it's hard to get footing and to find your footing. And I think the way you guys explained it is really interesting, especially with how your introduction to maybe tech or to your specific organization occurred. Kind of I'm gonna ask a question of kind of both of you, but I'm gonna tailor it to each of your organizations. So, how do your respective organizations deal with the constantly changing world of technology? So, for Sasha, about like you guys focus on artificial intelligence, but artificial intelligence is so nebulous now. It's so changing. It's one day you can imitate someone's face, next day you can imitate their voice. And for Bella, how about how you deal with changing social media trends, or how you deal with how to kind of think about what people are responsive to now. So either one of you can start.
Okay, I'll say so. First, changing social media trends. The important thing is to research algorithm and understand. I'm gonna say SEO so many times. I can't stop saying it. I feel like but for the record, like search engine optimization, and it just has to do with how do you make things so that people will watch them all the way through and things like that. So that actually means spending a lot of time on social media and just seeing what people are responsive to, but it's also actually researching what website that you're on. So for example, if you're doing a lot of your stuff through, for example, like TikTok, and TikTok was something that I immediately latched onto. And the first thing I did, I think when I joined the organization, is I was like, we need to be posting more on here because it's one of the quickest and easiest SEOs to learn. And it's a really, really good one. And it's actually, when you read like nobody reads them, the terms of service and all that stuff that you agree to, the best way to optimize, honestly, getting your reach is to go back, re-download the app, read the terms of service, and it will give you a guide in there of like, hey, here's all the stuff we're doing with your data, by the way, that you don't know about. And so that's kind of a great guide to see what people are responding to. And then also generally there are things like posting at certain times. People tend to be on social media during certain times of the day and then during times of the week, and people tend to watch certain videos for longer amounts of time versus other things. And so I think it's just staying on social media, seeing what's up, and constantly actually reading like TikTok, Facebook, whatever, reading what their company statements are. And also because they give you a blue book to all of these things. This is all free internet information as to exactly how your For You page or how your feed is formatted. That's all just calculations mathematically. So I think it's just staying on top of that.
First of all, I think it's so interesting that you mentioned the terms and services, because that's something that like the New York chapter of Encode Justice had like worked on. Is like, no one's gonna read this, but it's so unfair. But anyway, for Encode Justice specifically, I think we have a specific sector for research. And so I think they're doing their own specific research right now. But we have a lot of so we have this amazing director of research, and he is really knowledgeable about basically everything relating to AI. And a lot of times so we have a Slack channel specifically for news. And so people put just like links to any articles that they see relating to any new things that had come up in artificial intelligence. And so that's one of the ways, is we just try to keep up with as much like news articles as possible and trying to just hear from as many sources as possible. And I think the other thing is Encode Justice has so many members that if something new comes up, at least one person is going to hear them, and then they would share it to the whole organization. And so I think that also helps a lot. And it's also really interesting because we're located in like different parts of the world, and so sometimes what's happening in another country might be a little bit different than what's happening in another, or what's happening in New York might be completely different from what's happening in California. And so I think just the number of members we have helps, and like the location they're in also helps. And I think using Slack definitely helps, and having that specific channel just for news helps. So yeah.
I definitely agree that there's always so many things that you have to like keep out for, like kind of Bella, what you were mentioning with SEO is constantly changing and always having to stay on social media to keep up to date. And Sasha, same thing with news always being updated about artificial intelligence, new AI that's coming. Well, that's the same thing, but just new technology that's coming out. It's definitely almost a struggle. And that's something I wanted to touch on too, is what do you guys think are some of the best ways that in activism or in these kinds of spaces, there's always so much you have to keep up with that it almost feels like you're always behind. Like every step you take forward is there's 6 more that you have to constantly battle. What is a way that you guys kind of keep that in check and maybe focus on your mental health or take breaks, or what do you recommend for that kind of those kinds of issues? And either of you can begin.
I think for me, just like kind of recognizing that you're never gonna know everything. And I think that's also something that's really cool about working in advocacy and just working in, I feel like, any field, is that you're never gonna know anything, but that also means that you can always learn, like in any space you're in. Like here, like I just learned so many new things about like SEOs that like I like never knew. Like I heard about SEOs before, I was like, wait, what does that stand for? So it's like you can always learn, which I feel like kind of seeing like the positive side of not really knowing everything and just changing your mindset and realizing, okay, like I don't know everything, but that means that I can always learn more, which I feel like is really cool. And I think also just understanding that you can also specialize in one specific thing. I think if you try to focus on advocacy in so many different fields, that's going to get really difficult, and you're not going to be able to put all your attention into the one issue that you really care about. I think a lot of people, they care about so many different issues, and that's why they want to address like all of them. But I think realizing that that's not really possible, and just trying to start with one small issue and going up from there, is what I would say.
I was gonna say, specifically for like mental health things, especially, it is so important to recognize that. So, like, for example, even when I'm talking about SEO, that goes for everybody who's writing the research articles that you're reading. So that means that if you are doing a ton of research about something, right, like what you're saying, like trends are constantly changing, a lot of the times they're not. A lot of the times journalists want you to believe that trends are constantly changing, because when you read a headline that goes, hey, this giant thing is about to change your life, you're going to be like, wait, what? You're going to read it, and guess what? That person just made $1 off of you. So part of that is recognizing, and this is a big thing that I encourage anybody to do, is to consciously always think about what you're reading on the internet, and recognizing that when somebody writes an article, when somebody writes a headline, it's because they are doing it to make money, and they make money when you react. They make money when you get angry, and they make money when you get stressed. They make money when you stay up all night researching things. So it's so important, I think, to, even if you're researching something about, okay, how do I stay on top of the latest trends? Recognize that the person who wrote the article about that is already doing a little bit better than you, because they're